Hello everyone, this is Gary from Fantastic Fundas, and today, before we start with the topic of foreign policy, I would just give you a quick summary of what all we have been discussing and how we have reached here. This will take less than 30 seconds. Let me just quickly get it for you. Now, in the earlier lectures, this is how we did. We started with the 28-month rule of the Congress. Through this, while if we see on the timeline of the history, we have reached around 1940, and then we talked about the peasant movement, and then about the princely states, especially the case of Hyderabad we discussed in quite a detail, and few other details about others, and then we moved to capitalist, and now we are talking about the foreign policy. So in other words, what all we have been doing, all these are basically the themes of the history that came up, that appeared during this time period. That is what we have been doing. And once this is over, then we will be moving to two more themes which are left, and one is the theme of communalism, right? And then the second theme is about the governor generals that happened at this time up to 1940. We stopped at governor generals quite a time back, and once we are done with that, we will move further in the timeline, so about regarding the modern history of India, and very soon this series is going to end, right? So let's begin by the foreign policy of India during the British times, and how British exploited us and misused us, and all the story we are gonna see that, right? So let's start. Now, we all know one very particular characteristic of the Britishers, and that is they were what? They were imperialists. Now, if Britishers are imperialist, that means they were expanding, right? Now, for expanding, that is expanding their territory, right? Expanding their area. They were acquiring new colonies, new areas. Now, to expand, what do you have to do? You will need to fight with the people who are already ruling there. So they had to fight. To fight, you will need resources, right? And where would these resources come from when the British are ruling over India? These resources would be Indian resources. And if the resources are Indian, then how would Indians react to that? They would fight back against the Britishers. That is how the whole story is. And if we fight back, there would be further resentment, and this would contribute to the nationalist struggle for the freedom of India. And that is why, because of this whole chain over here that I have covered, this topic of national foreign policy is very important for India. Now we'll explore this chain only in our lecture. Now, just quickly before I move ahead, there are few things to add on over here, and it's over here. One is the use of resources. Second thing, it meant that you're interfering in the internal affairs of others. Now, when you're interfering in the internal affairs of others, Indians do not like that. Even today, that India's foreign policy, if you have studied that, you will observe that we do not follow this particular interference in the affairs of others. So that opposition has existed from a very long time. In fact, I've read some writers even say that present policy of India of not interfering has some contribution to it by the early nationalists of India. That's how it's going on. And then Britishers were, of course, as I said, using Indian resources. By that I meant Indian army was used, Indian money was used, and they were, of course, defending. It wasn't just for expanding. I'll just add one word over here now, and this was to defend also their present colonies. One is to expand and one is to defend. For example, they had colonies in Africa, in Asia. So that's how it all just went on. Now let's start with the new thing, and that over here will be that in this policy of expansion and using Indian military and having military expeditions, the first major, I mean the large scale military expenditure. Okay, now please don't come start commenting that sir, earlier also Britishers were using Indian army. The first large scale, please be careful of every word that I mentioned, and this was a large scale usage of Indian military outside India for the purpose of expansion by the Britishers, was done in the year number 1878. Now, you all know this that you see, I'll just show you again that chart over here. So, one of the things you need to observe that I'm going to talk here is this, that they were defending, expanding. I'm going to cover this particular topic of this chain now. Okay, so let's begin. The areas where they were doing, really that was happening outside India. The credit, because it's a large, the important word is large scale use of Indian army outside. It was during the 1878 to 80. Now, can you recall the war over here? We have discussed this war in full detail. This is Anglo-Afghan war. This is Afghan war, and this was second Afghan war. And if you remember, you see, you always have to be very contextual. I'll tell you the trick that I use while writing answers. You see, 1878 to 80. Now, who will be the leaders of Congress who will criticize this war at that time? Can you think of the names? If you know your modern history well, especially the initial part, you can easily answer this. One name you just cannot miss over here is it is Surendranath Banerjee. Surendranath Banerjee was there, and you can write other names also, because everyone will criticize it. You just have to show your knowledge in the exam. You can always mention it. Now, this is not the greatest process, but this is just a hack of doing the things, right? Then there were many expeditions. For example, in 1882 there was expedition sent to Egypt, and it was under Colonel Arbi. And after Colonel Arbi, and then of course you know this 1885 Burma was the next, and then of course that was again by using Indian army. And Burmese, you remember that, right? Burmese, they were engaged in what is known as guerrilla war, right? And then after that 1903 it was Lord Curzon came, yeah, it was Curzon, and he attacked Tibet. We did this story also quite in detail. I remember having shown you the map also of Tibet over here. Now all this is happening, we understand, right? There were many after this also. This expansionist policy was typically followed by the Britishers 1890 onwards, especially on the northwestern side of the India, right, and northwestern front of India. And now there were various reasons that why Britishers were engaged in all this. As I showed you initially in that table over there, I can just show you that again. Yeah, you see this over here, but because they were expanding. Now I'm just answering this question, that why was it all happening over here? Okay, now the reason that this was happening over here is, let's put it on the new page over here. The reasons for this expansion by the Britishers. There were many reasons. Initially, as I told you, they were imperialists, and because they were imperialists, they of course they wanted to do commercial expansion. That was the basic thing, and to expand commercially you need to have more territory, and thus Britishers were looking for more territories also. That's how it was going on. And then Britishers said, now how did they justify all this to Indians? They said, okay, we want to save you from Russia, guys. Russians will attack you and we are the saviors. So they in the garb of being a savior of India from the Russians, the Britishers started attacking the nearby countries of India. Indians said, now what was Indian reply to all this? You know, all this is over here. Indian said that, you know what, guys, this is Indian saying to a Britisher. Okay, this over here is Britisher, this is Indian. The Indian is saying to the Britisher. They said, guys, listen, Anglo-Russian war or the British-Russian war is, it is the result of the colonial interest, and India had nothing to do with it. When Russians attack, it's not attack on India, it's an attack on the Britishers, and we have nothing in it. That Russian aggression was a bogey, and it was, you cannot justify imperialism on the basis that the Russia is going to attack, and you just cannot use our army, our resources, our people. Why should our men die for you? That was the question. Right. So this is how it was going on, and there was more opposition. For example, there was a lot of financial burden on us. And then what about political morality? Political morality. Now, ethics is something my favorite subject. Actually, ethics you will just enjoy with me. I'm gonna do that soon. Let me just manage time, right? Anyway, so and another reason that they were reason or why we were opposing them, right? What it all led to was one was money, political morality, and then there was no Indian interest in the whole scenario. What was the interest of Indians? Just no interest of Indians in it, right? And after the 1815, moreover, Britishers had increased the tax burden on India because of which there was extra burden and already which was existing, and then the Britishers are attacking foreigners and then taking our money and our people and our resources, and our men are dying, and then you expect that we should be quiet about it? It's not possible, right? But that is why now, in this background of Russians misusing us, the Indians, I am going to talk about the national foreign policy of India. National foreign policy. Now, in this policy, basically, this whole policy from 1880 to 1914, I'm going to give you just short summary of this. There are three themes which are clearly visible in our policy, right? Number one theme is solidarity. You can note down this in your copy. Solidarity. Number two theme is Asian. I'll give you detail of all this. And number three is economy. So three themes which covered Indian foreign policy, the national foreign policy of India from 1880 to 1914 are these. Yeah. So in these three themes over here, one of the important things is number one point is solidarity. Solidarity with whom? With the people against whom Britishers were fighting. And these were the people fighting for their own independence. Now you see, they have the aim of independence, we have the aim of independence. So automatically we will have solidarity with them, right? So that is why we had solidarity with a lot of people. For example, the people of Ireland, that's of course the most obvious one. If you have read English literature, you would be very well aware, and of course history also tells majorly history that tells you about the movements in Ireland, how that inspired India. We also refer to this during the first decade of 20th century, right? So Ireland is there, and we also sympathized with the people of Turkey, and then Burma is there, right? Afghanistan, so many actually, right? If you can remember any or all, whatever you wish. Egypt is there, Sudan is there. I mean, there is no end to all this. And then Ethiopia is there. So all these were the countries with whom Indians were showing solidarity. And second, over this one over here, the point was Asian solidarity. Now, what do you mean by this? By Asian solidarity, I mean, for example, we say we are Indians. Now, at a larger level, we are Asians also. And this consciousness, that Asian solidarity, the word here should have been consciousness rather. So, it's about Asian consciousness and the consciousness of Asian identity that is became prominent. Let's call it Asian identity. Asian identity. And this identity over here, it emerged for the first time after the 1885 Burma War. And in opposition to Burma War, this Asian identity emerged. This is an important fact. Please try to remember this. Against whom? Against our neighbor, right? I hope you all know where is Burma, right? You can see over here the location of Burma, right over here. Okay. Now, one important aspect of this is Burma, and second important aspect is of Japan, right? Now, Japan it was a backward country, but after 1868, Japan grew as an industrial power, and this was hailed by Indians. It was hailed by the Indians that look, even the Japanese, who are under Western control, they can grow. Even an Asian economy can be one of the largest economies. So that sentiment was reflected. But of course, Japan was later on criticized for attacking China in 1895. 1895 it was criticized, right? Now, third theme is the economic rationale. Of course, we know this, that how economy was ruined, right? Let me just change the color over here. How economy was ruined, and it was ruined, and then the foreign capital controls that that played an important role in criticism of Britishers, right? So economic ruin was another thing. Foreign capital, foreign money. That is important point over here. So these are the three themes in which the national foreign policy of India can be summed up overall. Just remember these three things whenever you write answer on the national foreign policy of India during the British times. This will fetch you a lot of marks. Three things, right? Number one is, of course, you know this. Number one is solidarity. Number two is number one is solidarity. Number two is Asian consciousness. Let me just write the word over here. Consciousness. Okay, this was it. Consciousness, right? This is what it was about, consciousness. And then, of course, number three over here is the economic factor, right? These three things you have to remember. Now, moving on. Now we have re-entered, almost touched the 20th century. In 20th century, one of the most important events was World War One, right? Now, obviously, because we are talking about national foreign policy, in this context, the most important event was World War One, because the world is fighting. You cannot be secluded. You have to think that what will be India's role in the World War One. When we were not ruling ourselves, somebody else was ruling us. So we had to decide our policy. And what did we think? We thought about very interesting part of it, and we thought that let's give Britishers a chance. That is, let's support the government of India at that time in the struggle against the fascist powers. And because we have supported British government of India, I mean the Britisher. So because we have supported them, the government of India, it would pay us back for our loyalty. This is what we thought initially, and they would pay us back regarding this through economic and political concessions. This is what they were saying. Now, people even like Tilak, they supported that we should give Britishers a chance at this time. Okay. Number two over here is that what we thought, right? We thought that because Britishers are fighting for the principles of democracy, so after the war is over, they would also give India democracy, because that was the context in which Britishers were fighting over here. Right now, after the war, nationalists they developed their foreign policy in direction of opposition to political and economic imperialism and cooperation of all nations in the cause of the world peace. That was our policy. So we, after the World War got over, this is World War One. We can just start on the new page. So after the World War got over, we started the policy of peaceful coexistence, of cooperation. Let me write this, of a peaceful coexistence, and of the policy that is of the world peace. That is our approach, and we started opposing the political and economic imperialism. Now this is like, they can always ask you, what is the impact of World War One? Was this the impact? Yes, definitely, it influenced our foreign policy. Most of the people will not be able to write this detailed thing. If you write this, this will be highly impressive for the teacher, for the checker. And after the World War got over, and the important stage came in 1919, when the Congress sessions are very important for us, because they are integral part of Indian freedom struggle. And the Congress session was held at Amritsar, and at this time M.L. Nehru, Motilal Nehru, daddy of Jawaharlal Nehru, he was the head, right? Jawaharlal Nehru's dad, he was there, and he demanded for the Indian representation at the peace conference through its elected representatives. This is what they raised. What did they say? They demanded for Indian representation at the peace conference, right? Of course, this is after the war, through its elected representative. This was their demand, that we should also be given representation. Now, this is very interesting because what is this peace conference? I will give you details of this in the world history lectures, right? For now, just remember that there was a peace conference and Congress wanted representation there. Now, of course, this is part of foreign policy, right? So this is how the foreign policy of India was going on. Now, I'll need to stop this lecture here, but let me just summarize the upcoming lecture quickly regarding this, right? So the upcoming lecture over here, this is about, I'll tell you quickly. Now, number one thing that in the next lecture we'll be talking about is that now after this we started having sympathy for the other colonies, right? We'll have detail of this. Number two, we will talk about a term which is important for your prelim exam also, and that is internationalism. Do you know what is internationalism? You've heard about nationalism. What is internationalism? We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the foreign policy of the Congress, right? And number four is the alignment of our war and the foreign policy of India. Okay, that will end the lecture, and after that we'll start with the communalism. Okay, so this was one thing. Now another important thing is that I need your help now. And how can you help me? Because you see, first of all, I need your help. I'll tell you, you are getting all these lectures for free. And then number two is I'm completing this, right? Now you won't find this easily everywhere. Either it would be paid or it would be incomplete. And number three, this has a sense of my lectures, and I'm quite well aware about it. This is what like a lot of people have been telling me, and that is why I'm aware that these lectures have what is called sense of fullness to them. They are not just a rain of facts. It's not just factual, right? Of course, facts are there, but then it's with proper explanation, right? So this is how it is going on, and how I need your help. Like for all this, like you're just sitting at home and studying all this. So what you have to do is I want your support in sharing this lecture. So please do share it with all on social media and with your friends also, right? And number two is do click on the like button, because when you click on the like, I get to know that these lectures are good, and everyone gets to know that what kind of lectures these are, right? And number three is, if you want this video and all the future videos to come in your email box, then you will need to subscribe to us. And to subscribe, you can just click over here on this button, right? So that is all, and thank you so much for watching this video.